What is up, everybody? This is Adam. Welcome back to Fouled Out. Little change up on the podcast today as we are starting to talk about college basketball and March Madness 2025, one of my favorite events of the year every year, and a very welcome distraction from the NFL calendar as we are still about 6 weeks out from the draft. And I have now reached the point in the offseason where I am doing multiple mock drafts a day on PFF as the Patriots and trying to mock out all sorts of different scenarios. So a very welcome distraction indeed, and a very fun one. Matt is going to join me in just a moment. We're going to talk about Cooper Flagg, the super freshman from Duke and the presumptive number one overall pick in the NBA draft. We're going to talk about some other players to watch, the current and future state of college basketball. And then we're going to jump into the actual bracket with our first impressions, give you guys a little bit of help filling your brackets out, talk about some upsets we really like in the first round, potential second round matchups that are looking good, and then final four picks and championship picks. This is the fastest that Matt and I have ever turned around a bracket show where the bracket came out about 24 hours ago from when we're recording this podcast. But we did all the research, listened to all the information, cranked it out over the last 24 hours, and we have completed our brackets and we're ready to help you complete yours. This podcast comes out Tuesday, the 18th, the same day that the first four starts, and then March Madness Thursday at noon. Let's go. I'm so excited. Just a reminder before we get started, you can reach out to us, fouledoutsports@gmail.com. Let us know who you are picking for the final four and who your championship pick is. But for now, let's grab Matt. Let's talk March Madness. Let's go. All right, Matt is here. Really the freshest off of Selection Sunday that we've ever been on this podcast.
By far.
How you doing, buddy?
Good. How about you, man?
I'm good. I think we had a tough assignment this week with doing the NFL free agency pod last Thursday and then coming back on Sunday night for the selection show and getting a whole bracket and a whole podcast turned around in 24 hours.
Yep.
But we're here. We do it for the fans because if we didn't do this today, the pod probably wouldn't come out until the tournament had already started, and I want to get it out ahead of time. So, like, we're here. We're here for you guys. It's been a lot of work in the last 5 days, but here we are. And I'm excited to talk about it because I love the next two big segments of this podcast are, including this episode, 3 March Madness episodes, and then 5 NFL draft episodes. And
yeah,
I get very energized for this time of year, very excited. I mentioned in the opening, I need a distraction from the NFL offseason to get me through the next 6 weeks. So here we are, ready to talk college basketball, which is not a sport we spend a ton of time on every year, but I feel like the time we do spend on it is high quality. I do want to start by talking about the star of the tournament, and maybe introducing the casual fans, like, and I mean very casual at this point, like the people who have not watched college basketball all season. I want to introduce them to Cooper Flagg. He is the best player in college basketball. He is the number one prospect for the NBA, probably going to win the Wooden Award, and he leads the number 2 overall seed, number 1 seed Duke, who is going to be one of the favorites to win this tournament. He is 6'9", 205, averaging 19 points, 7.5 boards, 4.1 assists, and 2.8 stocks per game, blocks and steals combined, while shooting 37% from 3. The scouting report on Cooper Flagg for the NBA: positives is everything, negatives is nothing. Look at his scouting report on Tankathon. Everything is green. It's like the projected NBA shooting, defense, offensive efficiency, defensive efficiency. Like every single advanced stat, every single stat basically points to the fact that this kid is going to be extremely good at the next level. and potentially a franchise changer. And I don't know, man. I'm super excited to watch him in this tournament.
Yeah, I would say like ball handling is probably like the weakest part of his game, and Jaylen Brown would kill to be able to dribble like him.
Yeah. Yeah, he does everything on the court. He's a high impact player on both sides of the court.
Yeah.
Um, and teams are already tanking in the NBA to get a hold of
Mhm.
him.
Yeah.
We talked last year about the tournament not having very much star power. Like Zach Edey was the big draw last year.
Yeah.
And granted, Purdue went all the way to the finals and Zach Edey had a great tournament and it was a
Mhm.
worthwhile draw. But star power is not something that this tournament is lacking. I mean, Cooper Flagg is at the top, but there are excellent upperclassmen all throughout this tournament. Unfortunately, for this tournament, the number 2 and number 3 prospects in the NBA draft, both freshmen, decided that they would like to attend Rutgers this season, who finished the season 15 and 17. So we will not be seeing either, oh God, what are the names? DJ Harper or Ace Bailey, which, like, what a baller name Ace Bailey is.
Yeah.
So we will not be seeing either of them in this tournament, unfortunately. The number 4 overall prospect, VJ Edgecombe, plays for Baylor, who made it as a 9 seed. So they're not great, but funny enough, if Baylor is able to get by Mississippi State in the first round of the tournament, they will play Duke in the second round, which, from what I understand, it's not very likely Baylor beats Mississippi State, but I'm rooting for it just because I'd like to at least see that like Cooper Flagg versus VJ Edgecombe matchup.
Yeah.
I feel like some of the more memorable March Madness matchups we've had over the course of the last like 10 to 15 years have been these super freshmen playing each other. One game I remember pretty vividly is UCLA versus Kentucky when it was De'Aaron Fox versus Lonzo Ball. And
Yeah.
De'Aaron Fox just took his lunch money. And I was like, dude, why is this Lonzo Ball kid going to be the number 2 pick in the draft and not De'Aaron Fox? And obviously we kind of saw how that turned out. But I think star power, especially for like people like us who are NBA holes and watch and talk about NBA way more than college basketball,
Hmm.
I think that's really going to help in this tournament. Um, Unfortunately, Cooper Flagg did turn his ankle during the ACC tournament, but Duke looked very good without him still, and they're saying he's going to be 100% for this tournament. So maybe we don't see him as much in the first round, but definitely in the second round against Mississippi State or Baylor, I expect him to play. And then from then on out, I expect to see 100% Cooper Flagg. That's a very exciting thing. I'm interested for more casual fans that I know to start watching his game. Like I've watched him, I've studied it more as like an NBA fan who's interested in the number 1 prospect in the draft. But I'm excited to see what he can do in March because this is going to be the biggest stage he's ever played on.
He's had some like national coverage games, but this is this is a whole other level of spotlight. Um, Honestly, it's gonna be bigger than really anything he's gonna face in the NBA immediately.
Yeah, especially playing for like the Wizards or Charlotte.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to play another game this important for a while
Yep.
unless you are like able to transform a horrible franchise that quickly, or in the very, very likely scenario that the NBA rigs it to make sure he goes somewhere that's not going to absolutely like destroy his soul
Yeah.
immediately, like they did with Wemby, where they rigged it for the
Hmm.
Spurs.
But who's in the playoffs now?
Haha.
Adam Silver, huh? Your loss.
Could have had Wemby and Cade on the same team, Adam Silver. Now Wemby has to suffer with De'Aaron Fox. But I do think that guys like Cooper Flagg have a major impact on viewership of the tournament. Another really memorable game I was thinking about while doing the notes was when Zion was at Duke and what a huge deal that was. They played UCF and Taco Fall, I believe, in the second round of the tournament. And it was like a super close game. And it was one of the best college basketball games I've ever watched. like super entertaining, not only watching Zion, but watching like Taco Fall and the UCF guys like try to stop them. I think it was like 77-75 or something like that. So I'm looking forward to that. But I wanted to give people an idea of what kind of prospect Cooper Flagg is, or like kind of what level we're talking about here. So I went through the last 25 years of the NBA draft, and I took all of the number one overall prospects, or I guess number one overall picks, because some of them were debatable, and put them into a tiered list, kind of breaking out what prospect goes where. So Matt hasn't seen the tiers yet. I'm excited to get your take on some of these, but tier one is generational prospects. And we have two guys in this tier. It is LeBron James and Victor Wembanyama.
Yeah.
That is it. The word generational is overused way too
Uh-huh.
much. More in the NFL, but really like generational has become way too commonplace to describe players. I also went through NBA history, and
Yeah.
I think in NBA, the entire history of the NBA, I think there are only 7 generational prospects, which makes sense when you think about the fact that the NBA has been around since like the early 40s or 50s. We've probably had what, like, 6, 7 generations of guys come through. So I listed the generational prospects as Victor Wembanyama, LeBron James, Shaquille O'Neal, Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Wilt Chamberlain, and Bill Russell. Those are the only 7 like truly generational guys. There may be guys that you can make an argument
Yeah.
for, but I think those guys are unassailable.
Yeah. No, I have no argument there.
I was waiting to see if you had somebody to add. I think like there's probably people that are like, oh, Dr. J, or like other stuff, but like,
Yeah, but like in terms of like guys, like there's just no debate,
yeah,
right?
there's
They
zero debate.
just simply are.
To address the other portion of that too, I think maybe younger listeners might not know that guys like Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan were not even drafted first in their draft.
Hmm.
So saying like, oh, Jordan was a generational player. No, one of the things that was really special about Jordan is that he was not generational at all. And he came out of nowhere to become the GOAT. And like Kobe was drafted like 7th overall in his own draft.
Yeah.
So yeah, not counting those guys. But okay. Tier one, generational, LeBron James, Victor Wembanyama. Tier two is elite, guys who would be the first pick in any draft if there's not a generational player. I have 3 guys: Zion Williamson, Anthony Davis, and Yao Ming. As prospects, I think those 3 would have been the first pick in any single draft except for the ones where there's a generational guy.
I might push Dwight Howard there.
So I have Dwight Howard in the next tier.
Yeah.
And I thought about it a little, but thinking, wasn't there like a huge debate between who should be picked first overall between Dwight Howard and Emeka Okafor back when he was coming
I
out? I think
mean
it was that
that
draft.
yeah, I think I feel like that debate was kind of lopsided. It felt like one of those like very much media fueled debates,
Yeah,
right?
this is back
ESPN
in
doing ESPN things.
yeah, this is back in '04, mind
Yeah.
you, as well. So we were all
Um,
pretty young back then, but
yeah, but like I mean, looking at what he looked like coming into the league, the team that he took to the NBA finals, like I hesitate to think that even in retrospect, like anyone would regret picking him number one in most drafts.
yeah.
So,
Well, this I think he was like really raw coming in, if I
yep.
remember this correctly, and that Emeka
Hmm.
Okafor had dominated for 2 years in college, and we were still kind of stuck in that like oh, he has college experience. We've seen him. We know what he is, kind of thing.
Yeah,
But so yeah, we'll say Dwight is border. Maybe he's tier
fringe.
2.5.
Yeah.
Tier 3 was tank worthy. These are guys who are worthy of being the first overall pick, and you would
Mhm.
purposely be bad to try to acquire these players. And this is going to be the biggest tier because these are guys who were high level prospects who panned out, but like they weren't. Anthony Davis is like the best example of the elite tier where they're like, this
Mhm.
is like the best prospect since LeBron James.
Yeah.
He wasn't like generational, but it was like, this guy's really fucking good.
Hmm.
But the tank worthy tier, Dwight Howard, Derrick Rose, Blake Griffin, Kyrie Irving, John Wall, Karl Anthony Towns, Ben Simmons, Cade Cunningham, Paulo Banchero, Greg Oden, and Cooper Flagg. I think this is kind of the level that Cooper Flagg is in, where we've known for a year, 2 years that he was going to be the first overall pick in this draft. And he's like a
Yeah.
guy we've looked forward to where we're like, this guy is going to be a star player.
I'm still waiting for the day that we find out just how old Greg Oden actually was.
The funny thing about Greg Oden is like I feel like Kevin Durant also could have been included in this tier because it was just so tight between Greg Oden and Kevin Durant
Yeah.
coming into that draft. So he's like honorable mention, but he wasn't a first overall pick, so I didn't list him. People may not know or may not remember Greg Oden because his NBA career was so short, but when
He
he
was
was coming out of
so
Ohio
dominant.
State, yeah,
Yeah.
coincidentally Mike Conley also on that Ohio State team.
Hmm.
So that was tier 3. So we have generational, elite, and tank worthy. Tier 4 is debatable, but talented. These are guys where it was a serious, serious conversation of like, is he worth the first overall pick? Should we draft someone else? And people are going to go ballistic on this. But the first one is Anthony Edwards,
Yep.
where remember back,
No,
there
there was
was
a huge discussion as to whether or
major,
not
yeah,
he was going to be number one.
major concerns about if he even liked basketball.
Yep. Yeah.
So Anthony Edwards, DeAndre Ayton, Markel Fultz, Andrew Wiggins, and Andrew Bogut. These were like guys where if any of the dudes in the previous tier had been available, they're easily the first pick over these guys.
Yeah.
But they became first picks in their draft because it was like, I don't know, like, is he really the guy we
Kind
should
of,
take?
yeah. Felt like a weaker draft that year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of them worked out. Like Anthony Edwards is a great player.
Yeah.
These other guys, not so much, but
I remember thinking that that draft with Ant, like, yeah, like definitely needs to be some more polish on this kid and all that. But like, if you don't take him at number one, who is giving you anywhere near the ups? Like the I understood why the discussion was being had, but it felt silly that the discussion was being had because the alternatives just
yeah,
they just weren't there.
It was Ant, James Wiseman, and LaMelo Ball.
Yeah.
But this is the thing is like if you had had any better prospect available, Ant would not have been the number one overall pick in that draft.
No.
Like Derrick Rose, Kyrie Irving, Paulo Banchero, any of those guys are in that draft. They're the easy slam dunk number one pick over Anthony Edwards.
Yep.
It sounds crazy now with how awesome he is, but it's a
Yeah.
real thing. And I don't want Minnesota fans in my DMs. Go back and look it up. So tier 5 is why did we have to have the first overall pick in this draft? These are the guys where your team gets the first overall pick and you're just like, really? This is the guy we're going to get. And this is Kenyon Martin, Kwame Brown, Andrea Bargnani, and Zach Shea. So like last year is the perfect example of this where the Hawks jump all the way up to number one and they're like, oh, fuck. Like there's nobody in this draft that's worth the number one pick, but we have to pick someone number one. And so Zachary Sachet becomes the number one overall pick.
And the worst part is like you can't trade out of that pick. Like you
It
no
was
no one's going to trade up to pay a rookie more money in that draft.
yeah. It's not even like you can't trade it for anything good. It's like you literally can't trade it.
Yeah, at all.
Nobody wants it.
Yeah.
So, and it already looks like the Hawks picked the wrong guy. Like Castle looks like he's probably the best guy from that draft
Yeah.
already. But tier 6 has one player in it. Any guess? This, I was thinking about you when I made this tier.
Oh, I already know. I knew there was gonna be this guy in one tier all on his own.
Tier 6 is just called Anthony Bennett. And the only player in tier 6 is Anthony Bennett. Where, what the fuck? Like, literally the worst number one overall pick in the history of sports.
He
Not even just basketball, like the worst number one overall pick
he
ever.
might be the worst professional basketball player I've ever watched.
Yeah. It
And
didn't make sense at the time either.
yeah,
I think about like Jamarcus Russell, who was picked super high in the NFL draft.
yeah,
I think he was like number 3 in his draft. You could see why you would pick Jamarcus Russell that high.
yeah,
Like watching him play in college, you'd be like, okay, like I get it. And it just turned out that there was nothing between his ears, and he just was a complete failure. Anthony
showed
Bennett,
up to camp at like 260 pounds or something like that.
yeah, they gave him a blank tape and then asked him if he watched it, and he's like said yes. He's like, yeah, I got it. They're like, oh god, we just spent like a first round pick on this kid, a high one. But like Anthony Bennett was not good in college.
No,
He was at a small college. He was at UNLV. UNLV was not
yeah,
particularly good that year. He wasn't particularly good for UNLV. And when they turned the card in, it was like, what?
yeah, that was the
Really?
exact response. Like, and granted, like this is in a weak draft. There were nobody knew he was gonna go first. Anthony Bennett was not on the list of players that was being considered by anybody else.
Yeah. There people had him on their do not draft list. Like there was teams that were not taking him at all. And
Yep.
Cleveland was like, we're going to take him first overall. We think he's the guy. And didn't make any
And,
sense as a prospect, didn't make any sense as a pick. And
mm-hmm.
he never even, I don't even think he completed his rookie deal. I think he was out of the league before
No,
his rookie deal was up.
no, I think that's true. I mean,
If not, it was just the rookie deal, and
like,
that was it.
how many shots did he take before he finally made one? It was a lot.
A lot.
Like,
So he played one, two, three. Yeah. Oh my God. It's even worse looking at it on basketball reference. He was in the league for 4 years for 4 different teams. He played for Cleveland, Minnesota, Toronto, and Brooklyn on his rookie deal. The first overall pick. Man, shot 36% from the field as a rookie and 64% from the free throw line.
he missed, like, I think it was, like his first 16 field goals, and it took him 5 games to finally make one.
Honestly,
He was straight up missing dunks.
just one of the worst players that you've ever seen.
Yeah.
Honestly, like first overall pick wasn't even on the team that drafted him his second year.
I know that when I say he is the worst professional basketball player I've ever seen, it sounds like hyperbole. I genuinely believe that. Like,
Yeah.
I have seen guys called up from the G League the day before and look more competent out there. Like, did Anthony Bennett have more like physical explosive ability? Yes. He couldn't do anything with it.
It truly baffles me. And this is why he receives his own tier. And he's so bad that I couldn't think of what to call the tier to explain how bad it is. So I had to call the tier Anthony Bennett because that's the only thing that explains how bad Anthony Bennett was. Those are the tiers. So Cooper Flagg, elite level prospect, a guy that we expect to be an all-star in short order. Unfortunately, like I said, the number 2 and the number 3 player in this draft have decided to attend Rutgers, which kind of brings a whole host of questions of its own. I was thinking about this when, I'm looking at it and I'm like, God, Rutgers sucked this season with
Yeah.
these two guys. And it made me think of other high level prospects who attended smaller colleges and completely failed to have any modicum of team success. And it kind of makes me question them as NBA prospects at this point, where like I already feel weird about the OTE guys and the G League guys, although the G League guys aren't going to exist anymore. Where and I'm kind of at the point where I'm ready to start crossing off these guys who go to small schools and the small schools are awful. Because I was
Yeah.
thinking about recent examples of this. Markelle Fultz was the number 1 overall prospect. He went to Washington and they went 9-22 with him on the team. Ben Simmons went to LSU. They went 19-14, which was much better, but did not make the NCAA tournament at all with him playing 33 games that season. And I think about guys like MPJ, Michael Porter Jr., like went to Mizzou, only
Yep.
played, they made the tourney that year, but he only played 3 games. I mean, I guess like MPJ has had more success in the NBA than those other two guys, which is kind of an insane thing to say. But I look at a guy like Markelle Fultz, like we'll use him as the example. Goes to Washington, they go 9-22. I'm not mad that you want to go to Washington. Like you pick whatever school you want for whatever reason. But for your team to be that bad,
Yeah.
where in contrast, Cade Cunningham goes to Oklahoma State, which is a non-traditional basketball school, and he leads them to a 4 seed. And it's like, okay, you're both point guards, but one of you very clearly raises the floor of your team
Mm-hmm.
and makes all of his teammates better, while the other one, yeah, you put up some stats, but your team's not doing shit. And I think that should
Yeah.
be more of a red flag than a lot of other things that we talk about when it comes to the NBA draft. So like my antennas are up with the two guys who went to Rutgers, Ace Bailey and DJ Harper, whatever his name is.
Yeah. In that respect, like it's almost easier to evaluate the guys that go to these uh I wouldn't necessarily call them smaller schools, but non-traditional basketball schools, right? Like not powerhouses, not blue bloods. What always said about Cooper Flagg, do not take this as a shot at Cooper Flagg, but like it is a little bit harder to evaluate a prospect that goes to Duke because they're surrounded by more talent. They have better coaching. They have like everything they need around them to be successful. Um, and so like unless they're having these like overwhelming moments showing like just how much of a force they are, uh it can be really hard to distinguish how much of the team's success is them and how much is just the situation that they're in.
Yeah.
Because some of these programs are built like a machine.
I think about it though from a development perspective as well,
Hmm.
where like Cooper Flagg is a better player coming into college than, and it's Dylan Harper. I keep calling him DJ Harper. I'm getting my names mixed up again, which I was hoping was just an NFL thing, but apparently it's not.
Nope.
Um, but I look at like Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey going to Rutgers, and I look at Cooper Flagg going to Duke. Cooper Flagg is already a better basketball player, and he's going to get
Hmm.
a full season of better coaching and better development and a better training staff and a better training
Mhm.
facility, and he's going to get better while these other guys are going
Mhm.
to schools. And it's like, I don't know much about Rutgers coaching staff. I'm not trying to disparage anybody, but like they're definitely not as good as Duke's.
Mhm.
Like look at
Yes.
Markel Fultz, like went to Washington to play for like his dad's friend, and it's like, okay, that's awesome, but it doesn't mean you're going to get good coaching.
But my point is more that there may be some rumbles, right? But like there really wasn't anyone pumping the brakes on drafting Zion number one. I don't think in retrospect anyone can sit here and say, yeah, you know what, Zion wasn't really intent on making the most of what he had at his disposal at Duke, right? Because he hasn't been intent on making the most of what he's had at his disposal in the NBA.
To be
It,
fair with Zion, though, when he was at Duke, he was like, this is why I had him in that elite level tier because he was like in amazing shape and like the athleticism was just otherworldly, like mind blowing. And I honestly think if he had been drafted somewhere else in the NBA and they could have
yeah,
kept like that,
because
that's
he
what I'm saying
didn't.
about coaching is like,
It's also
you know,
because he didn't have unlimited money to spend on all the junk food that he eats.
yeah. Well, this is the problem is like you can't know a lot of times like what's going to happen to these guys mentally when they go to the NBA.
Yeah,
But I wasn't trying to discount your point. I'm
yeah,
going on to the next point that like going to these smaller schools and you're kind of wasting a year of your development that's pretty
yep.
critical for you getting ready to the NBA.
Hmm.
And that was the whole idea of the G League was the
Yeah.
NBA is like, well, we're just going to get our hands on those guys sooner. And it's just
Hmm.
ironic that like schools like Duke have churned out way better pros
Yeah.
than the G League has. You think about guys who went to Duke, like I know, Kyrie off court stuff. We can happy to talk about that any day except for today. But
That's
like,
that's a full podcast in its own.
yeah, but he's been a good player. Jason Tatum's a good player. You can go on and on with these Duke guys.
Yeah.
Same thing with Kentucky. Kentucky's had the best run of NBA players of any school, honestly, over the
Yeah.
last like 10 to 15 years. So going to these non-traditional schools, it's like, you know, I'm kind of iffy on these guys coming in already because I'm like, okay, so now you're also a year behind kind of where you could be or where you should be at this point, maybe. I don't know. You're getting questionable development. Um, but it's not to say that like going to a small school, I mean, like, I don't know. I guess my overall point is like if you go to a small school, I want to see more success. Like think about Steph
Yeah.
Curry at Davidson. Davidson made two deep tournament runs with Steph Curry. And that should have been all of the sign in the world that people needed to be like, this guy's going to be really fucking good. Maybe we should draft him number one overall. He still went like
Yeah.
seventh or eighth in that draft behind other like multiple other point
That's
guards.
still, yeah, way too many picks too late.
And Cade Cunningham making Oklahoma State that good, like I think that told us a lot. And we said that in that tournament is like,
Yeah.
listen, this guy is far and away the best player on this team. So like I'm not saying you have to do what Cade did or what Steph did for me to be like going to the smaller school was a good idea for you. But what I am saying is that Rutgers is 15 and 17. These guys clearly did not contribute to team success at any meaningful level
Yeah.
this season.
You could
And
maybe write it off if it was just one of them.
it makes me question, do you have LaMelo Ball syndrome? Where the whole reason that nobody wanted to draft LaMelo Ball or that it was questionable of like where he was going to go is because he went to a team in New Zealand that's like, we're just happy to have you. Do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Or Australia, wherever he was playing. And
Yeah, I
I
think it was
wonder,
Australia.
like, a school like Rutgers, who has had nothing going for them for so long in any sport, really has an opportunity to get these guys. And they're like, just do whatever you want. We do not care. We just want to be relevant. And that didn't really help them be relevant either
Yeah.
because we're not going to see these guys. So it's questionable.
Yeah, well, it's tough because I do understand how, look, if you grew up with not a whole lot of money and then you're this high-end prospect and someone like Rutgers is offering you more money than Duke or Kentucky or, any of these other blue bloods, like, yeah, like, in what world is that kid ever gonna not take more money?
I'm looking it up right now too, and it's saying they chose Rutgers because the program showed him consistent loyalty and love, and it felt like home. The coaching staff showed up to all his games and checked in with his mom, and they emphasized brotherhood and a chance to play with his friend Dylan Harper. That I think
Or,
that's a fancy way to say they gave us a shitload of money.
yeah, yeah, I was gonna say, like that's a nice thing to say. I don't know if it's real.
Yeah. I think that this also speaks to the fact that some of these bigger colleges don't seem to care that much about
Yeah.
getting the super freshmen in nowadays, where it seems like a lot of college coaches have realized that their job is to win college basketball games.
Hmm.
And the best way to do that isn't necessarily to go and get the Ace Baileys and the Dylan Harpers of the world. Like,
Yeah.
the Cooper Flaggs, it's a different caliber of prospect.
Yeah.
And so that story might be a little bit different. But, if they're like, I could either go and spend like however many millions on this kid who's never played a college basketball game and is going to be here for 1 year, or I can spend my money keeping the Johnny Brooms of the world, like the fourth and fifth year players who are going to contribute to winning college basketball games at a very high level and probably not have much of an NBA future. Like they're kind of I think that's what's going on is that like some of these coaches are like, I don't care about
Hmm.
having all these famous alumni. We don't need to be Kentucky. We don't need to be Duke. We just need to be Auburn or Florida and not to say these guys don't have famous alumni, but
Yeah.
you get my point is that so many teams in this tournament and so many teams that we'll be talking about over the next couple of days and weeks are the teams that are led by, juniors, seniors, graduate transfers. There's so many fifth year guys that are the best players in this tournament that you can talk about. And I think that teams are realizing like it's way more important to have that guy for 3 years than it is to have a Dylan Harper or an Ace Bailey for one. I want to talk about the bracket, but I also just wanted to give quick shout outs to a couple other players to watch because usually we do like a players to watch segment and we both bring like three or four guys and we talk about them
Yeah.
um, to give some shine to like the non Cooper Flaggs of the world. So I just had real quick Johnny Broom, who I mentioned, fifth year senior wing at Auburn. He is the SEC player of the year this year. So the best player in the best conference on the number one overall seed in the tournament. Ryan Kalkbrenner is a fifth year senior at Creighton. He is a very tall center who shoots 67% from the floor while blocking almost 3 shots per game and is a force inside and they're going to have a very, very fun first round matchup against Louisville. Bennett Sturts is a point guard at Drake. You want to watch Drake and Bennett Sturts. We may be talking about Drake in an upcoming segment here. But Bennett Sturts is number 2 overall in the entire country in pick and roll efficiency, and they will spam the shit out of the pick and roll. It's like playing 2K against my nephew. It's they will just pick and roll, pick and roll, pick and roll, pick and roll until he gets what he wants. And then one guy who is not going to play at all, probably, maybe we see him in the first round, but I really doubt it. Olivier Rioux, the freshman center at Florida, he has not played a single minute this season, but he is 7'9". They were cutting. Florida just won the SEC tournament, and they were cutting down the net, and he just did it standing. I'm not joking.
I
Everybody else
know.
climbed the ladder to like cut it, and he just reached up, cut his piece, and that was it. So if he gets any time, I'm thinking like maybe we see him a little bit in their first round matchup against Norfolk State, the 1 versus 16.
Yeah.
I think that's a worthwhile watch. there are great players all over this tournament. I mean,
Yeah.
if you're looking for another NBA draft guy, Derek Queen, the center from
Yep.
Maryland.
Yeah. I mean, like, they're going to be an interesting team for me because they've got, like, essentially their own Twin Towers situation.
Yeah, that do you hear that Maryland's starting five is called the Crab Five? It's like a play on Fab Five. They're the highest scoring starting five in the entire country. They think
Hmm.
they have like really good efficiency numbers for the starting five, but the bench is
Yeah.
not good. um, but yeah, Maryland also has four buzzer beater losses this year, and
Yeah.
so that either tells me they're underseeded because they have four losses they shouldn't have,
Hmm.
or it tells me they're 100% losing on a buzzer beater in this tournament.
Two things can be true.
Yeah, I just love the Crab Five. I was like, I'm taking them.
That's really funny.
I know. I was like, I'm taking them further than I should because I want to root for the Crab Five. All right. First impressions of the bracket. Watching the reveal show yesterday. What did you think when you started looking over this bracket?
I I felt looking at the bracket that I felt less inspired for upsets than I have in previous years.
I
I don't
100%,
know
I
if
100% agree with that.
okay.
Yeah, I wrote down three takeaways, and actually, one of mine, it wasn't that I wasn't inspired to pick upsets, it's that I think the upsets are going to be extremely difficult to pick.
Yeah.
And I want to hear why you feel that way too. But I felt that way because like a lot of the mid majors and lower seeded teams that I like, I was like coming into the tournament being like, yeah, I really want to pick. And before I saw the bracket, before it was revealed, I was like, I
Yeah.
really want to pick UC San Diego. I really like their profile. I like what they can
Hmm.
do. And then they get put in a matchup against Michigan, who just won the Big Ten tournament.
Yep.
And I really liked McNeese last year. And they're back this year as a 12 seed. And I was like, oh man, with Will Wade, they won 30 games again. They're better than last year. And they get put in a matchup against Clemson, who I think people forget Clemson went to the Elite Eight last year.
Yeah.
So I think some of the lower seeded teams that had a lot of hype coming in, they don't have the best matchups. And then like there's a lot of good teams this
Yeah.
year. There's a lot of experienced players. Like I don't, going back to that Clemson versus McNeese game, Clemson has two extremely good, extremely experienced guards in their backcourt. I just don't see them getting upset in the first round.
Montana was another like low seeded team that I was like maybe they can do some damage and then I don't know that I necessarily like them so much against Wisconsin. So
Yeah.
it just
Yeah, I think that was the big issue for me picking upsets. There are some upsets I like,
Mhm.
maybe including Montana over Wisconsin.
I thought about it. I didn't go with it, but I certainly thought about it.
I do have it. I have number
Yeah.
14, Montana over
Yeah.
Wisconsin. So it's funny you brought that one up because I did pick that.
Yeah.
Um, I want to talk about the upsets we did pick in a minute, but my first impression looking at this bracket was that the committee was like, you know what? Fuck the one seeds. We don't like them anyway because the eight seeds in this tournament are absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
I saw this tweet. Let me pull it up. I saw this tweet. So this is Evan Miwakawa, who does evan.miwa.com, which is like an advanced ranking site for college basketball. So his five seed team rankings are 22, 31, 37, and 40. And his eight seed team rankings are 9, 18, 21, and 35. So, like, he's saying the eight seeds, all four of them are basically better than the 4 or 5 seeds. I, I just look at it and I'm like, okay, so Gonzaga is an 8. They're the number 9 overall team in net efficiency on KenPom
Mm-hmm.
this season. Louisville's an 8. They finished the season 20-2 and made it to the ACC championship. UConn, the two-time defending national champion with the best coach in the sport, is an 8
Yeah.
seed. And then Mississippi State, I'm not as crazy about. Um, but they play Baylor, and like Baylor has VJ Edgecombe, who's a high level NBA prospect. So I don't know. I feel like the 8 seeds are underseeded, and I'm just going to go out on a limb and predict that at least one of these 8 seeds beats a number one. And I did pick that. I picked one of the number ones to go down to an 8. Um, but it's gonna be one of them, whether it's like the Zags over Houston, UConn over Florida, or Louisville over Auburn. I fully believe that is happening this season.
I wasn't quite that bold. But I mean I could something's gonna happen
Yeah. Well,
because it always happens.
this is the thing with the upsets, though, is like when they're hard to pick like this, it either means we're going to have a very chalky first round or it's going to be extremely chaotic and it's just going to be a bunch of stuff that nobody saw coming.
Yep.
Like, you know, nobody ever picks the 15 to beat the 2. But like maybe it's that. Maybe it's a 16 over a 1 again, which has now happened like twice in the last however many years. Like maybe it's something we don't see coming. I'm not picking one of those. I'm not that bold. I have a 14 over a 3. I have UConn beating Florida in the second round, which I think people are going to be like, what the F on that? Because Florida is an extremely popular national championship pick right now after winning the NCAA tournament. But I just kind of trust the DNA with Dan Hurley, who's just dominated the last 2 NCAA tournaments.
Another thing that I'm kind of looking at is like what teams are coming in on like coming on a bit of a slide. Um, if I remember correctly, like I think it was Arizona was one of the ones that I was like, I'm not trusting you to go very far simply because of that. It just that was a kind of a bigger sticking point for me is like if you're playing worse at this time of year, then I'm not gonna trust you to execute when there's a bigger spotlight on you than you've had all year.
I think Auburn's a really good one for that as well because they're the number
Yeah.
one overall seed in the tournament and also like kind of back their way into the tournament.
Yeah.
And they're a team that could really use a break right now. Speaking of Auburn, one of my takeaways was SEC good at basketball. So 14 of the 16 SEC schools made March Madness. It is by far the most teams a conference has ever sent to the tournament. The previous record was 11. So they smashed it. They have 14, but I'm kind of like technically it's 13 because one of them is Texas and Texas is in the play-in game. I'm like I kind of feel like you need to win that before I say you're in the tournament, but the official count is that they have 14 teams in the tournament. But just besides the sheer quantity of teams, they have 2 1 seeds, 2 2 seeds, a 3 seed, and a 4 seed. And it makes me wonder, like, is the SEC going to dominate this tournament, or are they going to be massively disappointing? And we're gonna like only 2 of them are gonna make the Sweet 16 or something like that. Like we're gonna be sitting here in 2 weeks and just be like, "Holy shit, the SEC sucks." Because it
Yeah.
seems to happen like that every year, where like one conference gets overseeded and like a whole other conference gets underseeded.
How many times I feel like every year we come into the tournament thinking like, oh yeah, like this conference is stacked.
Yeah.
And then that conference just gets mollywopped in the tournament.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago. It was like the Big Ten
There was the Big
had,
Ten definitely
yeah,
shit the bed big time.
multiple times,
Yeah.
multiple shits in the same bed. Yeah, and then we've seen it happen with like the ACC. We've seen it happen with other
Yep.
conferences. Like,
Hmm.
I also am looking at this and just wondering like who could Cinderella potentially be? It because it's always like this is the thing, same thing as the upsets. It's not the teams you expect. Remember last year, NC State made it to the Final Four as an 11 seed.
Yeah.
Remember that they had that kid who looked like a refrigerator on wheels, who was like awesome, the center.
Yes.
But they like nobody would have picked NC State last year. They didn't win their conference tournament. They like, you know, you can always go back to the UConn years, but like at least UConn's a blue blood where they were,
Yeah.
a lower seed in Kemba, and then the other year that they go crazy with Lamb. So I'm waiting to see. I think like next week when we come back on, we'll have a better idea of like who that team could potentially be. Because I mean, for one, obviously we'll be in the Sweet 16, but like two, we will have watched some of these teams play and be like, oh, like that's kind of who the potential Cinderella is.
I I kind of got like really into Maryland.
How far do you have Maryland going?
Elite Eight.
I have Maryland in the Final Four. We feel the same
I
way.
chicken. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I You could probably talk me into it.
Yeah. So we'll talk about our Final Four in a little bit. I did two brackets. I did one that's purely based on statistics and maths. And then I did one where I just picked it myself. Like before I looked at all the statistics and stuff, I was like, okay, who
Uh-huh.
who do I like? Um, and I got a little freaky. Got a little bit freaky
Oh, freaky deaky.
in mine. Yeah. Not at the top of the bracket, but the bottom of the bracket got a little freaky. We like it like that sometimes. Before we talk Final Fours, I do have some upsets I do like in here. I'm not picking like a crazy amount of upsets. Like, remember 2 years ago where it was like the most upsets in the history of the tournament through
Hmm.
2 rounds? I'm not going that freaky, but I do have like 5 or 6 upsets that I'm picking that I'm like, I do like it. Do you have any that stand out to you that you really like?
Kind of jumped on the Drake over Missouri upset like immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, I don't know how much explanation I need for that other than Bennett stirs. Uh,
Yeah,
but
Drake actually, I have Drake over Missouri as well. That's one of my two
mhm,
favorites. And I have Drake going to the Elite Eight, actually. So Drake's kind of fascinating because they play at one of, if not the slowest paces in the entire country.
yeah,
And they were interviewing their coach. So their coach was like an amazing Division 2 coach and came to Drake and brought like 4 of his 5 starters with him from,
hmm,
I think it was like Western Montana State University. And they've won, I think, 30 games this season in his like first or second year there.
yeah,
Um, so they were interviewing him. They purposely play slow because they're preparing for March Madness, where they're going to play slow.
yeah,
Missouri, on the other hand, likes to play at one of the fastest paces in the
yeah,
entire country. So it's very much going to be a stylistic matchup of like Drake
hmm,
wants to slow it down, pound the rock, work it. Missouri wants to get out and run. And I think
yeah,
it's easier to slow a game down than it is to speed it up.
yeah. I mean, speeding it up is kind of at the mercy of how effective your defense is at creating that speed. Um, are you generating turnovers? Like, are you dominating the glass and getting out on the fast break. Like you can kind of just slow a game down by being efficient with your offense.
Yeah. And you mentioned Bennett Sturts.
Yeah.
He is playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers.
Yeah.
Drake versus Missouri is one of the games I'm most excited about in the first round. Another upset. Well, I don't even know if you can call this an upset. So my favorite one, that was my number two. My number one is Colorado State over Memphis. This is number 12 versus number five. Memphis is number 51 in net rating on KenPom, while Colorado State is, I wrote 12. 12 is not right. They were like number 42. So, like, although it's a 12 versus a five, the 12 has a higher net rating than the
Hmm.
five. And I think most telling of all, Colorado State's favored by 2.5. They're the only team, the only lower seeded
Yeah.
team to be favored over the higher seed. And Vegas is telling you something. Colorado State's just a better team than
Yeah.
Memphis is. And it's a 12 versus 5. Like, this is the famous upset spot.
Yeah. No, I have them as well.
I did
Let's
pick my
see.
my last one. I was going big game hunting, and I did pick Montana over Wisconsin,
I know.
which we mentioned earlier. So the Montana Grizzlies, won 14 of their last 15 games, and in that stretch, shot 54% from the floor and 42% from three, both of which are the best marks in the country. For the season, they shot 50.2% from the floor as a team, which is the highest mark in the country. So they can fill it up for sure. And I think that, like, you see that a lot with some of these lower seeded teams, is that they have trouble scoring when it comes to March
Hmm.
Madness. I don't think the Grizzlies are going to have any trouble scoring. I just think they're going to have a shitload of trouble stopping Wisconsin. So that one's more of a dart throw. I don't like love
Yeah.
that one as much as the other ones, but I was like, I need something. I need some
Yeah.
juice.
Uh, I did take McNeese.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean it's kind of as much of a dart throw as your Montana pick as well. So we'll see. But it
I
was kind of the same justification as like I need one.
I have Clemson in the Final Four. So really hope you're wrong there. Uh the other ones I had, like my little quick hitters, um, ones that I'm looking at but not necessarily pick. I mean, one that I'm picking is High Point over Purdue for no other reason than the memes. The memes are the memes for a reason. Purdue's lost to basically every single seed that exists. And just because they were good with Zach Edey last year doesn't mean that that's going to stop. So that's a 13 and a 4. Um, Yale over Texas A&M is a 13 over a 4. This is just what Yale does when we get here, is that like these Ivy League teams always seem to upset people. Yale pulled one off last year. And then I have North Carolina winning their first four matchup and beating Ole Miss in the first round, purely for the fact that everyone is so pissed that North Carolina made this tournament. And I just feel like we're going to be sitting here next week being like, God damn it, North Carolina's in the Sweet 16. Just the maximum amount of pissing everybody off. Although I didn't pick them to beat Iowa State in the second round, but I could just see it happening just because it is the thing that would piss everybody off the most. Let's give the folks our final four predictions.
Are
Although
very clearly radically different Final Fours.
I think I've mentioned every team I have in the final four so far. But you go ahead with yours, and I'm gonna do my whole thing I do every year that everybody's gonna roll their eyes, but it's right every single year.
Michigan State, St. John's, Duke, and Houston.
I respect it. I think that would be fun because the longer Rick Pitino and St. John's is in this tournament, the more fun we're about to have.
Yeah.
Which, like, looking at second round matchups, St. John's is going to play the winner of Arkansas and Kansas, which is John Calipari versus Bill Self.
Yeah.
I'm like, and it's in Providence. I'm like, there's no way that's not fun.
Yeah.
There's no way in hell that's not fun.
Yeah. Oh, and I think that there's a lot of people, at least in like the younger generations, that have forgotten or never knew like just how good of a coach Rick Pitino is. So
Yeah, St. John's versus Kansas, Rick Pitino versus Bill Self would be the two active coaches with the
yeah.
most wins and the best winning
Mhm.
percentage in March.
Yeah.
All right, so before I do my final four, I'm going to lay this out for you guys. There is a certain historical criteria that every single champion of the last, well, I think it's like 22 years, something like that, 22 to 25 years, has met. Uh, every champion was top 57 in offensive efficiency, top 37 in defensive efficiency in Ken Pom going into the tournament. All except one team was top 21 in offensive efficiency. That one team being one of the UConn teams that made a magical
Yeah.
run, which, like, UConn skews almost every single point of this. But no team has ever won the national championship after losing their first conference tournament game. No team with a first time head coach has ever won the championship. Tubby Smith in 1998 was the first coach ever to win a national championship in his first year at the school. No team higher than an 8 seed has ever made the national championship game. No champion has ever come from a conference that had less than 3 tournament bids. No top 2 seed who started the season unranked has ever made the Final Four, which includes MSU and St. John's.
Mhm.
So you're breaking norms here. And then every champion since '04 has been in the top 12 of the Week 6 AP poll. So all that criteria basically gives us 6 teams who could win the national championship, which is actually a lot more than the last couple of years. But those 6 teams are Auburn, Tennessee, Alabama, Duke, Florida, and Iowa State. And those are the teams that are top 21 in offensive efficiency. If we go all the way down to top 57 in offensive efficiency, which would include the Connecticut teams, tier 2 is Gonzaga, Houston, Kansas, Marquette, Oregon, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Texas Tech. So that said, I have committed a mortal sin and I've filled out 2 brackets this year. One of them is completely math based. So I took this criteria. I looked at all of those teams that I just mentioned on tier 1 and tier 2 and took all of them as far as they could go, basically. So, like, all the tier 2 teams go until they hit a tier 1 team, and then the tier 1 team beats them. And then if 2 tier 1 teams play, you just pick the one you like more. And that left me with a final four of Auburn, Duke, Florida, and Tennessee, which would be 3 1s and a 2. I didn't like that final four. So I made a second bracket, which is just my picks. It's more like heuristics, the teams that I think are going to be more fun. Got a little freaky with it, but still ended up with Auburn, Duke, Maryland, and Clemson as my final four. So that was a lot of things to say. Just to say, Matt, who is your champion in your bracket?
Uh, I'm taking Duke. I am gonna ride the Cooper Flagg train as long as I can. Could very well burn me. But like it's the most solid thing I have right now. So
I hate to say this because I'm going to get so much shit for it, but I also have Duke. I have,
yeah.
I have Duke over Auburn. I'm just going to assume that Cooper Flagg's ankle is healthy. And the thing that I was most impressed about with Duke is that Cooper Flagg got hurt in the ACC championship tournament
Mhm.
and they still won.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so the team around him is really good. Khan Knuppel is another freshman who currently is like the number 7 ranked NBA prospect. So they have him and Flagg and a bunch of like upperclassmen,
Yeah.
graduate guys and seniors, and like they seem like a machine. Um, Florida's a super duper hot pick right now. I look at some of these other teams like Houston and um, Tennessee and all these other guys, and I'm like, they just haven't been able to get it done.
Hmm.
Haven't been able to go as far as like a team like Houston's had so much success over the last 4 years, and just
Yeah.
feels like they constantly are out earlier than they should be. And then like teams that are like St. John's kind of came out of nowhere to be an awesome story, but I'm like, man, are you these teams that haven't like had the narrative of like we're going to keep bumping our head against the glass ceiling till we finally break through? Like, are they really going to win? And like, not that Duke is necessarily one of those teams, but when was the last time Duke won the championship? The fact that we can't remember off the top of our heads, 2015, they beat Wisconsin. They beat Wisconsin, and it was Jaleel Okafor, Quinn Cook, Justice Winslow, Grayson Allen, Marshall Plumlee, Semi Ojeleye. Like,
Wow.
not the best Duke roster we've ever seen, and certainly not as good as this Duke roster. Um, but yeah, it's been what, so 10 years since Duke won
Yeah.
one. So they're probably due. It's not a team that goes that long without winning a national championship.
Yeah.
But that is it for us. As always, Fouled Out can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Overcast, anywhere you get your podcast. You can hit us up on Gmail, fouledoutsports@gmail.com. And breaking news, I have regained access to the Fouled Out TikTok account. Fouled Out Sports Podcast on TikTok. We will start posting videos again because I got it back with all the followers and all the good stuff. So that is back. And March Madness is here. Finally, we got like this is going to come out on Tuesday, so like 2 more days, and we'll all be happily watching college basketball for the next 3 weeks. Matt and I will be back next week to talk about the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament, start looking into the Sweet 16, who the potential Cinderellas are, and kind of where we're going from there. But for now, I will see you later.
Yep. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye,
Bye, Mom.
Robin.